This is Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks, and you're listening to the Kayfabe Connection, your home for facts, rumors, knowledge, trivia, and everything you know or hope to know about pro wrestling.
Welcome to the Mankind Cave. Welcome to another episode of Kayfabe Connection. Here to talk about one word: dive. Anyone that's a wrestling fan knows about this whole dive fiasco. That's all you have to reference. We're talking about the whole Randy Orton situation, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I at least wanted to just get some thoughts out about this topic. So this was like the hot topic of the week as far as wrestling is concerned. And it's crazy because, today, this is Friday, May 19th. Today, we've already seen at this point that there was a UK episode on the network. If you haven't watched it, it aired at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know I even got texts from friends that were like, oh, that's on? Yeah, it already aired. I watched it. I thought it was awesome. Kind of a similar vibe to the CWC. I know this is just a show and that was a tournament, but if you watch the UK tournament, it's the same flavor that you're going to get with this, only this time you're getting Jim Ross on commentary with Nigel McGuinness. So from the commentary standpoint, from, little vignettes that they throw in there, it really helps establish characters, and I know that is the goal at this point with WWE is trying to establish people, which is hilarious to me because in the current structure of WWE booking, there's 3 invincible characters, and then everybody else is a mid-carder who goes through 50-50 booking. So it's really weird, like, we got to establish people, but the only thing you're establishing them as being is just a mid-carder because there's no significance to what they do. And this is quoting Vince McMahon himself. Jinder Mahal actually referenced this on the Talk is Jericho podcast that just recently posted. You can check it out on, Podcast One and iTunes and all that stuff. But it was a great interview. But even Jinder Mahal himself admitted that, the way that Vince McMahon sees it, fans have a short attention span. And I know wrestling fans aren't known for their intellectual candor and high IQ, but it's really shitty because wrestling fans are cool people. They're loyal people. Why not treat them like they're human and not subhuman, like they're just idiots? And that's the age-old. Every wrestling fan is some fat, ugly dude that lives in his basement. I had people throwing shade at me on Twitter, at the letter Kayfabe Connection. I had different females that got on there who were criticizing me because, I noted that the excerpt from the AJ Styles, wow, it's been a long day. The excerpt from the AJ Lee book, The Crazy is My Superpower, I got the audiobook from it. I'm about halfway through, but there's an excerpt from that book that was posted. This was a couple weeks back, and she references kind of at the end of the book, kind of almost like a bullet list of different sort of look out for, these type of scenario type things to her, her unborn daughter. When you're born, you're going to have to deal with this and stay away from this. Well, she referenced that girls who are infatuated with this whole phenomenon of just taking selfies, and doing the puppy face on Snapchat and all that stuff, that there's some type of daddy issue there, or there's some type of I didn't get enough attention issue, and you don't want that to carry on into your dating world and with the guys that you date and having certain expectations and just it was along those lines. I don't want to, just completely reinvent whatever context that she was trying to establish in the book. But, I heard that and I was like, there is truth. There is some truth to that idea and just noted the validity of her point. It wasn't like, yeah, people who take selfies are whack jobs and nut jobs and how dare they. But we're at this point now in 2007, and trust me, we'll carry this over to how this relates to the Orton situation. But it's to the point in 2017 where it's team sports arguments, right? It's team sport argumentation. We see that in politics. You're either on the red side or the blue side. And if you're on the third party team, you don't matter. You wasted a vote. You wasted your fandom. So you don't even count, right? You're either on one side of the fence or the other. If the other team does it, ooh, hiss, bad. If your team does the same thing the other team did, well, you see it in sports. There's a dirty play. Look at the Jaja dude from the Warriors. Dirty play on Kawhi Leonard. That was dirty. What if it was your team that did the same dirty play? I'm a Bad Boys fan. Trust me, I know all about dirty play. We had to keep Jordan and Magic and Bird, at bay back in the late 80s, early 90s. But this is what we're talking about, the simplification, these hasty generalizations of argument, where you get online and you just note the validity of an argument and go, well, that's a valid point. How dare you? What? You're just mad because no one's ever sent you a selfie. And I replied with a great Hannibal Buress quote, the comedian. I said, I'm so handsome. And then that person proceeded to retweet me like, can you believe this guy said he was handsome? And I'm like, oh, you want proof? So I switched the Kayfabe logo from the logo of the podcast to just a personal photo of me. And of course, to make it just the sheer irony of it, AJ Lee's husband, CM Punk, it's a selfie with myself and former WWE superstar, straight edge superstar CM Punk, which I thought was hilarious. Just kind of noting like, hey, I'm not an egg. The trolls that have like 4 followers on Twitter and it's like an egg for the picture, or it's a picture of their favorite wrestler, or just a taco. Like, it's never a person of any type of troll or a person that's real confrontational on social media. You ever notice they don't own up to the comments they make? They're just like they're like an entity. They're not even a human. I have a cartoon taco as my profile pic. I have no personal photos, so I can just go on. I have like Taco Honey 23, and I can go on social media and I can just shit on people. So that was the point of reference to that was, hey, see my face? This is who I am. I'm not some fat slob that lives in his parents' basement and drinks cases of Mountain Dew on the daily and just sits on the dirt sheets and Reddit, brother. Like, I'm gainfully employed in 2 careers. I do a podcast for fun. I enjoy my life. I'm happily married. I live in my own house. The Mankind Cave is not in my parents' basement. It's in one of my 4 bedrooms in my 4-bedroom house. And so this all goes back to the dive comments. Randy Orton. This is not breaking news that Randy Orton is a douchebag. Randy Orton, you look back at the old photos of him, he's got the alcoholic bloated face, the pillhead sort of, aesthetic to him. He looks totally bloated. Like the Evolution Rock and Sock Connection feud from Mania 20. Go back and watch that. And look how bloated, alcoholic bloated Orton looks in that compared to now. And even at one point, and I think it was his DVD, I forget the title, but his WWE documentary that was produced in the 3 DVD set, and they showed his ex-wife now. He's newly married, but his ex-wife and his daughter, and it seemed like he turned a new leaf. He's a family man, and he's all about his family, and that was a long stretch from this spoiled asshole who, would call, divas back in the Kelly days, the model wrestlers and not the actual wrestler days, but when the women's division was just models, and Randy Orton would, call them cunts to their face because how dare a female not be attracted to this dude that's all lathered up in baby oil and pops pills and looks bloated. How dare they not be attracted to him? And this isn't a shit on Randy Orton kind of reference, because Randy Orton he's beyond gifted. Triple H himself even said it, former Evolution stablemate. he's so good. It's like we haven't really seen his full potential. I 125% agree with that. I completely agree. Fuck, I think Orton's been in second gear for like the last decade. And you truly kind of you take it for granted how good he is. He's beyond talented. So we're not going to sit here. I can be objective, and hopefully, if you've tuned in, you've subscribed to Kayfabe Connection on YouTube. You're a previous listener, a new listener. Hopefully, you've established at this point this is an objective podcast. This is not a show that has a biased view and just sticks to it. Even if it's something I disagree with, I'm always going to look at the big picture and give a big picture perspective pertaining to any topic, regardless of the promotion, regardless of the person, regardless of a personal history or interaction that I've had with that wrestler. I will always be objective about topics because that's the way to be. So there's no questioning Orton's athletic ability. Also, there's no questioning Orton's wrestling IQ. He comes from a wrestling family. His father, Cowboy Bob Orton, just to name drop him. That St. Louis history has a fond relationship with Harley Race. We'll keep personal comments about him aside in the argument. But, picking his brain, another St. Louis wrestler, he has a high-level wrestling IQ. But there's all types of issues with him being critical about indie wrestling. Now, this whole thing started, and everybody knows the story now. I'm not going to sit here and read the transcripts and waste time doing that. At this point, this is not breaking news. This is days after the incident. But, Rip Rogers retweeted an indie wrestler who essentially, went on the Notes app in the iPhone just to kind of cheat the system, which I dig, when you want to get beyond 140 characters to put your point out there. And basically just showed kind of a mock breakdown of a typical the quintessential indie match, the popular indie match, and dive, outside dive, get wait for the pop from the crowd, yada yada yada, this is awesome chant, shake the hand of the guy, put him over on the mic, go on Twitter, put him and the company over, wash, rinse, repeat. So this was an initial post from an indie wrestler, which Rip Rogers took and retweeted it, which Randy Orton retweeted and put dive as the caption. And that led to, Bubba Ray Dudley posting his tweet of him, jumping from the top rope, which is pretty damn impressive at his age. And someone who came up in, the indies, and who ECW is basically a major indie. It was boo-booed on from WCW and WWE fans alike, and it grew in popularity because it presented a niche product that wasn't being shown in WCW or WWE. Everybody likes to go back and tout the Attitude Era as being just such an impressive era for WWE because they bent the rules and, they were out there and puppies and TNA and it was mature audiences only and they did edgy stuff. Without ECW, there would be no Attitude Era. In fact, the Attitude Era's biggest star, guess where he was at? ECW, right? He did that epic promo making fun of famous wrestlers who didn't want to book him the way he thought he was supposed to be booked, and the rest was history there. That was the birth of Stone Cold. The birth of Stone Cold wasn't the Austin 316 promo at King of the Ring back in 96. No, it was the ECW promo that he cut. So it's a bunch of horseshit. But anyways, this whole notion that Orton has the audacity to criticize independent wrestlers. Bubba Ray Dudley made his point. I believe the quote was from 2008, but essentially, to paraphrase, Randy Orton basically said that Bubba Ray was a fat ass who didn't know how to work and almost injured him. And this was back in a 2008 interview. I forgive me for not knowing the actual source, but you can Google it. It was a radio interview back in 2008, I believe. So you can go back and Google what he said about his initial comments about Bubba Ray. So this is something that has been brewing for years. The media will do what they want with it. The fans will do what they want on the dirts and Reddit boards and all that horse shit. But So that kind of tells the tale of that. And, that kind of led Orton to talk about, dive from, an out-of-shape guy that shouldn't be diving kind of thing. And from his perspective, and while it's not the most tactful way of getting the point across, I understand where he's coming from to a degree, because look at Daniel Bryan. You know how many dives Daniel Bryan, like, that was kind of the thing in his matches. If you watch Ring of Honor, his New Japan stuff, he loves taking dives. But you got to consider, too, while you may shit on that and say, oh, that's shitty wrestling, I don't like his style of wrestling. Well, he, in Ring of Honor at least, he was referred to as the best in the world by many fans. And, the American Dragon, that was his shtick. He was the best in the world. Before Punk was best in the world, Daniel Bryan was referred to as best in the world. So he did a lot of dives. But you kind of see where his health is at now. Were his dives the contributing factor to him no longer wrestling? Possibly. But from that standpoint about working smart, it goes back to the Miz promos that he cut, those epic promos on Daniel Bryan, on Talking Smack and SmackDown. There's a point to that, because some people go, Miz is boring and blah, 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 blah. Miz really has never been seriously injured. So looking at it from that standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, and just kind of being a smart worker, there's the validity to that argument. So I see what he's saying from that sense. Was he tactful with it? Nah. Because at the end of it all, Orton just kind of came out looking like a douchebag. And as we said before, this is the same guy who just essentially, from the OVW days, he got everything handed to him. I mean, his military background, that's a whole nother can of worms. I'm not going to talk about that. But he goes into OVW. He's in the best class ever, the Breakfast Club of developmental wrestling for WWE, with Lesnar, Batista, Cena, and himself. So he was in that Breakfast Club OVW class. He had the best workers, future Hall of Famers, all four of them. In that same class, it's easy street. And then you go from OVW, you go to WWE, you become the youngest champion in the company's history. And, he beats Benoit at SummerSlam. Triple H, he definitely wasn't ready. He had backstage issues. He was a dick to staff. He was on drugs. And so Triple H took the belt off of him, and, the rest is history with that. But it's always insulting for someone that's just had a silver platter judging other people that come up in a different environment. And it's like it's art imitating life, because essentially, isn't that life? Right? We have the affluent, wealthy folk who stick their nose up at the hardworking blue-collar people and go, ugh, all you have to do is work harder and you can get where I'm at. Well, how? Like, you're like Paul Ryan, not to get political. Paul Ryan's known for that political speech, and I forget who the audience was, but he's talking just about accountability with like work and, establishing yourself in life. And he's like, I never felt like I was just I was trapped, or I was in some, I was blocked in life where I was just stuck in this rut. Like I worked a summer job and then, went on and went into politics and da-da-da. It's like, but so your father is a well-known politician and you turned out to be a politician. You overcame the odds. Bravo to you. You look at Orton, he's already got the DNA for it with his father. He's not a first-generation wrestler, so he's got it in the blood. He's got the connections. He goes to OVW, the best class they've ever had. And like I said, it's not taking away anything from his talent, but you're seriously going to judge how other people earn their living? And then in his rebuttal, saying, oh, I'm a millionaire and this and that. Yeah, we got it. You're a millionaire, but just because you're a millionaire doesn't mean, A, I think you're a good person, or B, think that because you're a millionaire, your argument outweighs other people's arguments. Because it doesn't. So that shit is just so lame and so annoying. I'm a millionaire. I do it great. There's a lot of arguments, and once again, wrestling, it's like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. Everybody's got their flavors. While I do attest to just many of the criticisms that have been thrown Randy Orton's way, and just based on his personality and whatnot. But I can look at him as a wrestler and go, while I can appreciate his athleticism and just his sheer, like, he just makes it look easy. His sense of ease in the ring. He's so fluid. I don't want to say flawless, but he's fluid in the ring where he can just dance circles around people. With that being said, while I do think he's one hell of a wrestler, I am bored to fucking tears with him. And you'll get people who will say, "Oh, they shouldn't push Cesaro. He sucks on the mic." And not to compare Orton and Cesaro's in-ring ability, but Cesaro is one of the better in-ring, in my opinion, one of the better in-ring workers in WWE. But you'll have people who will sit there and say that, Cesaro sucks on the mic, so he shouldn't be pushed. Randy Orton has the charisma of a 5-day-old grilled cheese sandwich and cuts the most monotone promos that sound like this. At Backlash, I'm gonna win. Come to the ring right now and we'll see who's been. Like, it's the same monotone promo. And, there's certain things that come to mind because I've been a fan since Randy Orton joined the WWE. I mean, I was well into the golden era. Back in the 80s, I was a fan. But I've seen Randy Orton since inception into WWE. There's a handful of things that I remember about his career. All right, I remember the pay-per-view where he went for the RKO and he got flung out of the ring by Triple H and he fucked up his collarbone. Like, I remember that. I remember his first win, of course, over Benoit for the title. Of course, everybody remembers the thumbs up, thumbs down with Orton. I remember the Legend Killer gimmick, which I thought was some of his best work. I mean, you could go on and on about his Legend Killer stuff. There were the reports that said that Orton was supposed to defeat the Streak at WrestleMania and beat Undertaker. There's always been that story, and that was a huge deal. I remember that. There's great moments that I remember of him, but there's just a lot of shit where it just... Christian's another. That was a low-key feud, like one of the better feuds I've seen in a long time with WWE, was that Orton-Christian feud. And you see how that went. That's another can of worms. Christian was the champ for, 4 days? Because Edge was retiring, and they wanted to just kind of stir the pot with that, and then Orton gets the title back. I remember reading it on a dirt sheet, like the SmackDown spoiler, right after Christian won at the pay-per-view, and this was back when SmackDowns were on Thursday, so yeah, it was a 4-day title reign. And I remember reading the spoilers, and it was like, in a rematch, Randy Orton defeats Christian to take back the title. I was like, what? And I think that's a big criticism on Randy Orton, is the unnecessary title reigns and just significance and stories. Like, what is he adding at this point? And that was one, and I'm saying it because that was one of his, braggadocious statements that he put out there was, I'm a 13-time champion. Okay. Kayfabe titles. That means not right. It's just a prop. What do they say? Don't be a mark for yourself. I hate that word when fans use that word, but I'm just quoting. I'm not, but this guy, the Bray Wyatt feud was atrocious and was all over the place. Them getting the tag titles and then Alpha beating them and for no reason, and that did nothing for Jordan or Gable. And he goes to Mania, he wins the Rumble. This is a multiple Rumble win. He wins the Royal Rumble. Why does Randy Orton need to win the Rumble? Then, furthermore, Bray Wyatt gets the title finally at Elimination Chamber. This guy is the eater of pins. Year after year with this dude at Manias. Well, he's getting the rub from legends like Taker and Cena. Great. He's getting the rub from the mat on his back. That's where he's getting the rub. His back hurts from his back rubbing on the mat. That's where the rub comes from. And finally, they give a new star a title, and Orton comes in, gets the pin, in a shitty match. That WrestleMania match was atrocious. And they tried saving it with like pictures of maggots and cockroaches in the ring, which, granted, it was cool, but there was no saving that match. That didn't save that match. You got this House of Horrors match, which on paper, you're like, oh shit, that's great. And they bored people to tears. There's some people who thought that was great. That cool. That's your opinion. There are others, like myself, that was boring. They had dolls hanging from a roof, and they had a fridge with doo-doo on it that got thrown on top of Orton. That's essentially House of Horrors. Baby dolls hanging in a doo-doo fridge thrown on top of Orton. That's what everybody remembers. Right? And how did Randy Orton know to get there? Did he have GPS? Was he on his Maps app? Did Bray Wyatt text him the address beforehand? There were all kinds of issues. Why was it dark outside there, but it was light outside in San Jose that night? You know, and kayfabe-wise, like we know, it was filmed in Missouri prior to that show, but that thing was just the shits, the drizzling shits. And there's been plenty of moments where Randy Orton is just kind of thrown in your face for whatever reason, real heavy, but I relate it to sports. You look at certain players, and you look at a player like Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan, players in your opinion that you could say, man, he really makes his teammates better. And, you know, then there's other people. Like, I look at a LeBron James. LeBron James doesn't make other people better. He surrounds himself with already established people, like the two All-Stars that he has in his team. But he doesn't make the little dudes, the little guys, better. And that's always been a criticism, at least on from me to his part, is, well, how does he make WWE better right now? How is he making other people better? I don't see it. You can go all the way back. Look at Mania 26, the whole legacy thing. I was at Survivor Series when Taker returned, and you know the casket got electrocuted and it caught on fire. Taker returned. Orton was hoisted up because he was the sole survivor, and then everybody's like, "Oh shit!" Set him down, and then Taker, of course, choke slams him, and that was like a big deal to end the show. I was at the Royal Rumble in Detroit when it was down to Legacy and Triple H, and Orton wins. That was the most boring Royal Rumble ever. The only thing good about that Rumble was Edge, Jeff Hardy, when Matt Hardy turned on his brother, and that was like a big deal. And I remember me and my cousin and another dude were the only people in the arena that were like, yeah, and stood up. But you look at that, Orton in the Legacy Triple Threat match at Mania 26, all that leading up to it, he goes over on both of them. Nothing happened. Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes are now no longer with the company. They did nothing with them. And you look at other talents that have worked with Orton, where have they been? Where are they going? What's the payoff for that person? Are they going to get one over on them? And, look at the complaints. Look at the complaints on Orton's end. Look at Kofi Kingston's run. Kofi Kingston looked like he was getting primed for an IC title run, or dare I say a main event feud. And had a great feud, showed his personality. He was getting over. He was over. I believe it was Madison Square Garden, where he threw the paint on his car and then just had that sick match and the crowd was going nuts. Oh, he was reckless in the ring, and I don't think he's ready. And going to management and telling him, he's not ready. Ken Kennedy, that's another issue. He wasn't safe in the ring. Get rid of him. So, to me, Randy Orton will always be viewed as Cena Jr. He's the 1B to Cena's 1A. Or hell, he's 2. He's always going to be number 2. That he is in the shadows of Cena for the rest of his life. So, WrestleMania 25. Forgot to bring that up. WrestleMania 25. The greatest wrestling match I've ever seen in my life. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, their first encounter at WrestleMania. That was the best wrestling match I have ever seen. And luckily I was there live for it. Triple H Randy Orton was the antithesis of that. That was one of the most boring matches I have ever seen. Live. Ever. And the crowd was dead. Oh, well, they had to follow, Shawn Michaels' Taker, so that the crowd was dead. No, the crowd was dead because the match was anticlimactic. They had this whole McMahon build. None of the McMahons did a run-in. Randy Orton did, he handcuffed Triple H and, RKO'd Stephanie and made out with her and did all this crazy stuff. He was punting people in the head. The build-up was great. The match was horrible. And it in some cases, it takes more than a guy that's technically savvy to carry a feud because you need some type of personality. And I get it. Some of my favorite wrestlers have no personality. Like Dean Malenko is one of my favorite wrestlers. I could not tell you one Dean Malenko promo. I can't remember one. But he was a damn good wrestler. Maybe that might be why he was never in a real big main event feud. While he was a great technical wrestler, didn't really have any charisma. And there's no real way to push that person. Randy Orton, though? Yeah, he's our guy. Put him in there. That was another comment that he made. Well, I put asses in the seats. Who's going to a wrestling show and going, I'm here for Randy Orton? There's people, and I'm sure, and he has fans. He's over. I'm not saying he's not over. But is that the sole reason, like the main reason you're going? Fuck, look at the Backlash pay-per-view. Nakamura, Ziggler, and AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens are at the top of the card over Orton. There's like WWE's biggest fan and all these guys and like Brock Lesnar guy, they're all bitching online about, oh, Randy Orton and Jinder Mahal, I don't even want to go see that. Even dudes that waste $500 of their hard-earned cash every month to go, fly and sit ringside, even they were like, fuck, what the fuck, this is garbage. So, with all this being said, it's one man's opinion, right? And the reason we belabored that point of going over and even being objective about Orton and giving him praise where praise is due, but really examining his history as a person and the validity of his argument and his view, take it, to quote LeVar Ball, call it what you want, right? That's life. It's one person's opinion. You can let Randy Orton get your panties in a twist and go on Twitter and say you're boycotting him or get fake outrage or do a fake rant on a YouTube show, right? Or on a podcast. My point in this was just kind of looking at the pros and the cons of everything, looking at him as a person and as a wrestler and looking at things objectively and going, okay, why should this bother you? You decide, right? I was getting into it. There's, I want to say it right here. If you have a Twitter account and it's like Ambrose's baby or Reigns' boo or, Rollins' bae, and all the pictures you post are like pictures of them and, oh, he's so cute with our daughter or something, like, you need to seek psychiatric help immediately. Like, there are people, like, he's mine, like, hands off. And they don't even have human pictures on there of themselves. It's just 1,983 photos of candid Roman Reigns photos when he's in street clothes and not working. Weird. Weirdos. But you'll have those people who are interacting with you online because you make one critical comment about, like, a Roman Reigns. And not the shitty hate that he gets from assholes that have sent death threats or made jokes about his deceased brother. But me, for instance, saying, I'm not really a fan of his booking, but I like him as a human and I like him as a wrestler. I think he's cool. And I dig him. I just don't like the way he's booked. How dare you say that? And, oh, people are so quick to hate. And this harkens back to the original statement made at the beginning of this show. Stop taking a criticism as a hasty generalization. A criticism, I'm not saying when I critique something is that I'm going to shit all over him, I fucking hate him. No, I'm being critical of this aspect of it because, once again, being an objective big picture thinker, there are several angles that you can tackle and approach. There are several facts that we don't know. Fans think they know everything. We don't know everything. And I say that myself. I don't know everything. All I can do is take what I know, make an inference based on the information that I have, make sure that the sources that I have matter and are valid. Look at the history of the sources and the responses that are given about this topic. And then you, like I said, you come to an inference, you make a judgment about it, and you move on. But what Randy Orton thinks about independent wrestling, to quote The Rock, I could wipe a cockatoo's ass with it. Randy Orton's displeasure with indie wrestling, or Rip Rogers' displeasure with the stylings of indie wrestling, or WWE apologists who you ask them what other wrestling they watch and they go, huh? Oh, I watch New Japan. Oh, I bet you do. You're a smark. You're an IWC member because you like more than WWE, right? You have those people. Their opinions don't matter. Just the same as Randy Orton's opinion doesn't matter. And more so beyond just that it's one man's opinion, but for all the aforementioned reasons that we spoke of on this show. So, go out and enjoy your life. Enjoy this weekend. There will be plenty of dives in the UK special. There will be plenty of dives in the NXT TakeOver. Hell, there might even be some dives on WWE Backlash. There damn sure is going to be some dives in the Evolve shows this weekend, taking place in Summit, Illinois, and Livonia, Michigan. Go to FlowSlam. Get the FlowSlam app. It's $20 a month. You get to see Matt Riddle versus Kyle O'Reilly. You get to see Zack Sabre Jr. versus All Ego Ethan Page. You get to see Keith Lee, who in my opinion is one of the best workers on the indies, bar none. A man of gigantic stature who can do flippy-do stuff and do all that indie fun stuff that a lot of people like to shit on. Right? There's plenty of options. There's plenty of flavors. Right? Wrestling's ice cream flavors. People have their opinions. It's one man's opinion. This whole dive stuff, it's whatever. Enjoy wrestling. That's it. That's all I got for you. Leave comments in the underneath the video here. I appreciate the comments from the first video and people throwing out suggestions. I know I had a comment on there from the reintroduction episode of just kind of stating the case of the proceedings for Kayfabe moving forward, which Kayfabe Connection at one point was a podcast and it was shared across different avenues. Now it's exclusively available on YouTube. So we're going to touch on several topics throughout the week. There's really no set date like a podcast, like, hey, it's going to drop on Mondays, guys. Just all you have to do is subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to Kayfabe Connection, and watch the content add up. And beyond just review and prediction shows and reactions, but really being analytical about topics. Maybe cliche topics like this, just to just put everything to bed and move on. But really touching base on topics that aren't being spoken of in the wrestling world. Definitely from an independent standpoint and also from New Japan and standpoints. I know we have the Eastern Lariat show that's out there. There's some other podcasts who like to cover New Japan. My good buddy Derek and Mike and Dan and the boys down there in Memphis, Tennessee, down at the Oversell podcast. Check them out on iTunes, Mixler, on Twitter as well. Check them out. They talk about New Japan and give their responses to it. There's shows out there who cover it. But Kayfabe Connection as a vision is just a community of friends that want to talk about more than just WWE. So if that sounds cool to you, subscribe, comment in the video down below. And that's it for another episode of Kayfabe Connection. Next time someone tells you wrestling's fake, you tell them, so are movies and TV. Oh yeah, and dive.